I will exit once I have you on the live. It's just to make a few phone calls coming up. Okay, family. We have a lot to share. We have Alexandra with us here as well. Terrence, we're very grateful for you joining us, for you sharing your creative tips with our emerging writers, our emerging creatives, and also the writers who are just looking to improve and looking to get out of, you know, the writer's block, or just generally being blocked with everything that's happening around us. So we're hoping in the next hour or so you can share with us and tell us, what do you do to get the creative juices flowing? You know, the creative aspect of advocating, of protesting, of expression is so often undermined. It's so often just pushed to the side, but it has such an impact because words have such an impact. They may not be as impactful as action, but they still have an impact. And if it's a way to get what's on our chest off and out, we need to know how to do it. We need to know how to do it now more than ever.
Absolutely.
What you do, how you do it, and you're live on Facebook. Family, tell us where you're tuning in from. Ask Terrence all the questions. He'll give you some guidance. If you have something to share with him, you'd like his feedback, I'm sure we ask him nicely. He'll give on that as well.
Of course. All love, all love.
Floor to you.
Well, thank you for the kind intro, Dima, and I'm very, very, very excited to be here, everyone. You know, just acknowledging the revolution that is quite literally taking place around the world is something that I consider to be, you know, I consider myself to be lucky, I guess I should say, for being able to, you know, kind of witness, and I think that we all are. I think we also then have this very unique opportunity to really contribute our voices, our opinions, into stripping down what we don't like about what we see, right? And then having the courage, the bravery, the excitement to dream big and to start dreaming about the world that it is that we want to see. Deem, I'm not sure if you're still on the line, but I just want to make sure that everything is happening okay on the technology side, because I'm not seeing you anymore. Okay, I'm gonna assume that everything is okay. And
hi, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Okay, all right. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I got you, brother. You can hear me.
I thought I was talking in the vacuum for a second. All right.
Yes. Everything is going well. It's just checking you out on the Facebook. I'm sharing you to other places and everything. So we're good. You can heard everything. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Good. So on that note, besides embarrassing myself, when I'm not sure if I'm talking to people online, I have 2 brands that I operate, and so you know, what I can say is that my brand started as a result of, you know, I don't think I realized this in a lot of ways, but it started as a result of loving to write, and you know, just kind of looking back at my past, my history, you know, writing was just always my preferred method. You know, whenever it came time to, like, you know, speak, if I had to, like, say something in the moment, you know, I never really was prepared. You know, I didn't really know what to say, but, you know, if I wrote it down and I practiced it that way, well, then, you know, normally I was able to communicate with other people better. And, you know, I think I just combined that with a passion for books a lot. You know, I was a turnkey kid, like a lot of members of the Black youth here in America, where, you know, our parents were working so hard, working so much that, you know, we got dropped off in the library when we were kids. And so, you know, I spent a lot of time reading books there. You know, that being said, my 2 brands, Startup Sharks is a consultancy where I offer technical and creative writing services to business owners and founders, side hustlers, and anyone else that needs writing, right? And so what that means is that I offer anything from creative writing services, copywriting like social media posts, email blasts, newsletters, website copy, social media profile copy, all that good stuff, and then also more technical writing like business plans and documents, how-to guides, and manuals. And it doesn't really feel like going to work every day because I get to not only workshop on, I get to write my own ideas about business and social justice and impact, but then I also get to work with brilliant founders, the creatives that are able to make Africa Week 2020 a possibility. I get to write down their stories and add a little flavor, a little color, and so yeah, I love what I do, and that's my consultancy, Startup Sharks. My other business is my passion project. It's a company called Food Tribe, and we are a social impact platform for foodies. And what that means is that we offer a bunch of fun ways for foodies and restaurants and food brands to hang out with each other. We have a restaurant review platform called our Tap Reviews, where we review restaurants and food brands based off of taste, appearance, price, people, and planet. And then we also offer a educational platform called Radical, and Radical is designed to help raise awareness around the intersection between sustainability and food waste. And so, again, it was, Food Tribe originally started as a blog, just to give you guys some background. And, I was doing it in my free time. I worked in startups for several years. Out here, well, in Los Angeles. I'm based in Joshua Tree these days. But, I worked in the startup field for 12 years, and I really got to see, what was possible through collaboration, through creativity, through technical know-how, through, experience, like how you could take a concept and turn that into a business, that could last generations. And so, I took my 12 years of experience. At one point, towards the end of my career working for the man, I was selling digital advertising, and I did again, I was blogging for Food Tribe part-time, and I saw this video by Gary Vaynerchuk about how if you weren't happy with your career and you weren't spending extra time in the morning and extra time in the evening working on it, then you had no right to complain. And so I started writing. I started saying, okay, I got to figure out what this plan is. And, 3 years later, I've gone through an incubator. I've had a crowdfunding campaign where Food Tribe raised almost $10,000. I've landed clients. I've, been able to travel across the world, with these businesses. I've got a great team and, great tribe of people that, that love and are supporting me. And we've got a couple of Facebook communities that are, starting to become pretty popular in Los Angeles and abroad. And so, what I would just say is that, my life's not perfect. Obviously, I'm continuing to get better and I continue to have dreams. But it was coming to this point of understanding that, my why was writing. That's what I do, and just being real simple about it. I then began the process of designing the life that I wanted around that, right? So it's taking that core concept of, what I was doing, why I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and understanding that, and then, designing a life around that, and, I wrote down, I didn't want to work for someone else. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to do I wanted to have purpose in my work. I wanted to feel good about the way that I did business. And, at that standpoint, it then just became about getting better, about writing, right? And so I continued to develop that skill, pardon me, guys, through creative and technical writing, copywriting classes, and literature classes. Again, just working on copywriting, certainly pursuing my own literary passions or my own writing passions, writing for other people for free. A couple other tricks that, I definitely want to talk to you guys about. that's it in a nutshell. You know, I don't know if Dima wants me to go any further, or you know how we want to structure the rest of the conversation. But that was my really long-winded way of saying that, you know, I love creative and technical writing, and I can't wait to talk to you guys a little bit about you know, some tips and tricks that I've got to help get out your stories and your ideas. Are there any questions, anyone?
We would love to hear the tips and tricks.
Awesome. Okay. All right. For sure. I mean, should I just jump into it?
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. All right. For sure. All right. Well, first things first, let's acknowledge, right, that it's Juneteenth. So I gave you guys, you know, my whole background, but, you know, Juneteenth is obviously a very important holiday in the Black community. Well, you know, hopefully by extension, right, we can include members of the African diaspora into, you know, understanding why Juneteenth is such an important holiday. But, you know, I think, again, you know, I love words. You know, Dima meant she kind of got me started on, you know, how words have, you know, power and meaning for different people. And so, you know, when we look at this concept of Juneteenth, you know, I think one of the core kind of concepts or themes that we want to consider is this theme of freedom, right? You know, how powerful of a word is freedom, where, you know, one group of people totally is able to acknowledge, like, hey, this is life-changing. My world is getting ready to change. I'm gonna, you know, I'm a free man. I can start, you know, living my life the way that I want to live, right? Which was, you know, unheard of at the time, considering how, I mean, disgusting the institution of slavery was, right? In terms of, you know, not just the physical and mental abuse and anguish, but the real, you know, emotional impact. That first generation of freed slaves, you know, they had a lot of unpacking to do, and they had their own stories that, you know, I'm sure many of our great writers of our generations were inspired by some of those stories that were, you know, passed down. But this concept of freedom then by these freedmen had a bit of a different connotation, right? Well, you know, when we're looking at this word of freedom through the lens of Juneteenth, well, then what did that word mean to thousands and hundreds of thousands, or perhaps the millions of slaves that, you know, didn't know that they were free, right? That word freedom was something that was so tantalizing, and, you know, they didn't have the luxury of being able to say, okay, well, this institution of slavery is still impacting, or is no longer impacting me, right? I'm a free person. I can go start my process of healing. No, these same people continue to suffer until this date, right? And so when we just consider the story of Black America, of, you know, African Americans, the African diaspora, you know, however it is that you want to call it, however it is that you want to frame it, words have different meanings for different people. And when we do this thing of telling stories down the line, it's just really important to understand, I think, and this is, you know, I think my first tip for you guys is that, again, words mean different things for different people. So I want you guys to understand that words have both power and meaning, right? And so when we consider this concept of words having both power and meaning, you know, the meaning of a word has a different impact on certain people, right? And the power of a word has different meaning for other people. And so I can give you a real literal example of this, which is, you know, this concept of being rich or wealthy, right? To a billionaire, $1 million might not be wealthy, right? But to someone who makes $35,000 a year, and who might be, you know, the descendant of a former slave, well, that is an exorbitant amount of money. That's a lot of money, right? And so, you know, when we go through this process of, you know, communicating and writing, you know, I would just encourage all of us to really start defining what certain keywords or maybe even hot button words mean to you, the words that fire up some sort of emotion or feeling inside of you, right? And really having a firm definition on that. And then also being comfortable with that definition being fluid and changing, right, as you begin to interact and talk to other people. Because other people might have a different definition of the word rich, right? And, you know, part of this process of being a person is to, you know, have your own core set of beliefs and values and to interact with other people, right? And either, you know, build bigger bridges, right? Or say, hey, you know what, this is not a member of my tribe. Like, you know, we're not really interacting right now. We're not communicating well right now. So, you know, maybe we can, you know, come back to that later. So that's my first tip for y'all is, you know, define the power and meanings of the words that matter to you. And a second concept that I want all of us to hang out with on today is, you know, being comfortable with your inner voice becoming your outer voice, and then your outer voice becoming your inner voice. So you're gonna see a lot of, I do like a lot of balance stuff. You know, I love balance, but you know, and so what I mean by that is we're thinking things in our head all day. I specifically think about, you know, those of us that love to write, and I'm going to stand here. But, you know, if you keep everything in your head, I think that, or I believe, you know, it's been my experience that somehow has a way of manifesting out in the real world, right? You know, through your actions, your behaviors, through, you know, all sorts of things, right? So, you know, my recommendation for you as a writer is to, you know, really start working on your inner voice. And the beautiful thing about it is that you can work on your inner voice by writing, right? You know, and, you know, then you can begin the process of deciding, okay, well, this stuff I'm just going to keep for me, or this is the stuff that I'm going to share with the rest of the world. Give me 1 second. I'm getting an interruption. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. That was my cousin, my big cousin. So yes, that is, you know, my second tip for you as writers, as we start, you know, figuring out how it is that we want to celebrate Juneteenth and talking about how that impacts us is, you know, learning how to work on your inner voice and then being able to express that with other people, right, through your outer voice. And, you know, creative writing is it's a fantastic way of, you know, figuring out the stuff that you want to keep for just you, and stuff that you want to, you know, talk to other people about, right? You don't have to share everything with everybody. Some stuff is just for you. And so my third tip for you guys is in terms of, you know, just going back to this concept of words and meaning. It's, you know, as we start this process of putting words together, right? So we're putting together sentences and phrases and, you know, paragraphs eventually. We then begin to understand language, right? And language then, you know, starts sparking things into people, right? They start explaining concepts, and, you know, it then begins this deciphering process so that people can begin the process of understanding your inner voice, right? That you've begun to, you know, process, express to them, so that they can then take that outer voice that you've begun talking about through your writing, through your speaking, whatever that is, right? And they can then take that information, that data, and process it internally, right? And then that's how conversations start, right? And so 2 important concepts that I want you guys to consider when we talk about this concept of, you know, meaning and words and putting them together in order to, you know, put together themes and concepts is abstract language and concrete language. Now, this was a concept I learned about earlier this year through some writing mentors that taught out. You know, like I like people that love literature and books, and so, you know, I found, you know, as gone out to reach my tribe, that they struggle with some of the same things that, you know, I struggle with. So that's not an official tip, but definitely seek mentorship. But this concept of abstract and concrete, really was just, it just made so much sense to me, right? You know, I realized that sometimes I tend to speak real abstract, real ethereal, real futuristic, you know, trying to paint this really pretty picture so I can get people excited, right? Now that works for some people, and it's able to get some people along for my vision, you know, whether I'm writing a blog or writing a business plan or whatever that is, right? But a large portion of our population of humans, they don't always communicate in those abstract words or that abstract world. And so they live in the concrete world, right? And so concrete is, you know, more tangible, more like things that you can really feel, right? So if we go back to this concept of money, well, if we say, hey, I'm rich, right? And it's like, okay, well, how rich are you? Well, I've got $100,000 in cash, right? Well, $100,000 in a wad of cash to somebody, that's pretty concrete. Like that's a significant amount of cash to the average person in the world, right? Now, if you were to say, well, I've got, you know, I'm rich because I've got 50 cents and I had no money yesterday. Well, technically you are richer than you were yesterday, right? But that is, you know, if you're using that as a motivational tactic, right, that's again a little bit more of an abstract way of expressing yourself. And so it's totally cool, right? But just, you know, when we're talking about, you know, communicating and writing and developing an audience and speaking with people and all that good stuff, it's, you know, it's the best writers, in my opinion, are able to seamlessly weave between these really abstract concepts and these really concrete concepts, right? And so, you know, the concrete stuff, to Dima's point earlier, is the stuff that's able to, you know, you are action oriented on, and the abstract stuff is the stuff that gets you to start dreaming and gives you hope, or, you know, maybe even brings you to a place of despair, to a place of suffering where you can, you know, be more empathetic to people. And so, you know, again, like, you know, writing is it's both creative and it's technical. And if there's any one thing that you walk away with today, I really hope that y'all walk away with this, you know, as we celebrate Juneteenth, is that, you know, let's express ourselves creatively, right? But then let's use the technical resources that are available in the form of, you know, prose and structure and, you know, syntax and all that good stuff, right? To then really enrich our stories, and then to, you know, be really effective communicators in getting other people to understand, you know, some of the pains and some of the trauma, some of the effects, right, of, you know, the stories that we're looking to get out. And so that is, you know, just moving us along the line is my fourth tip for everyone is to work on your arts. And what I mean by arts is that is an acronym for a reality to share, right? And, you know, we've gone through this work of, you know, working on our inner voice and, you know, learning how to express ourselves better and learning that words have both power and meaning and are abstract and concrete and all that good stuff. And so, you know, as you start developing some courage and some confidence in your writing, start dreaming big. What do you want to write about? What's a great story that you never thought that you'd be able to fully express before, right? You never thought that you would have like the right tongue or the right pen or the right fingers if you're a typer to get it out, right? Share that with the rest of the world. It might take you forever. And there's some great examples of people, you know, current modern day authors, right? Like if anybody is a nerd like me and likes to watch Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, they originally started as books, which all great movies and television shows typically do, right? But the TV show got done before he finished writing the series, right? And so that's totally okay. You know, the TV show was separate and different than, that was a different reality to share, right, than what he's hoping to paint, you know, in my opinion, through his writing. And so have that integrity, have that creative integrity to, you know, really understand, like, you know, the world that you want to see. And if we start going towards that and you start learning more and uncovering more about it and you don't like it, that's okay. You can totally change it later, right? But have the courage to have ideas on, you know, the realities that are very real to you, right? And start seeing if you can, you know, develop your tribe and communicate that way, right? And so that's the other part of my fourth tip is just dream big. Dream big. You know, if we're looking at the world right now through this lens of post-COVID-19, even though, you know, most scientists are saying that, you know, we're still in the midst of the pandemic, right? We're seeing a lot of the social unrest, the civil unrest in the streets right now. And I think that that's representative, excuse me, of the culture telling us like, hey, we want to see a different reality, right? This has been our reality for so long. I want to see something different, right? And so as much as we are going out there and protesting and boycotting, which I'm par for it. Like, that's how we got to do it. That's how it gets started, right? Let's also then have the courage to start making demands. Let's put some thought into what those demands are, and let's collaborate and let's build those coalitions, right? But let's dream big about, you know, if we're looking at this sin of slavery, I would use the analogy of, you know, the sin of slavery is equivalent to dropping a nuclear bomb. So if we are looking to define a world post-nuclear bombs, right? Well, what's the opposite of a nuclear bomb? What, like, is just total abundance, total, you know, just so much like life, really. Not destruction, not pain, not trauma. And so if we can maybe start looking things from that way, it's like, oh, how do we channel some of that energy and to start, you know, dreaming big in order to then start expressing or communicating what we would like to see. I think that is also, you know, part of this dreaming big process. So I've got 3 more tips, guys, before we get out of here. And so if there are any questions, I haven't done a good job of checking. I'm going to hop in. Okay. But please feel free to ask any questions.
Hi. What would you suggest for someone who is like, I have a lot to say and I have, you know, I want to build the new world too. And I want my ideas out there, blah, blah, blah. Now you gave your tips, but when it comes to like putting pen on paper, like give them the, like, do this, 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 and this.
Totally. And that's
right now in this moment.
Yep. Yep. And that's where I was going. So my first tip in terms of pen to paper is literally start writing. And going back to just like how I grew up, like I wish I had it with me. I got some copies here. 1 second. I'm gonna keep talking, but I started writing journals when I was in elementary school. And if you can consider this, I was like 9 or 8 years old. My second grade teacher, she made us keep a freaking journal, which, you know, seemed impossible for me because I was so antsy. I want to go play kickball and stuff, right? But, you know, actually, so when we were moving out, I was moving out of my parents' place, and I discovered this old cache of journals, you know, starting with my one from like when I was 9, right? And that's a practice that I still have to this day. And this is the unfiltered me, you know what I mean? This is my schedule, my thoughts, my everything, right? And so, you know, the first thing that I would just say is, you know, don't throw these guys away. Purchase a journal, start writing them, just write whatever it is that you have to write. And then from time to time, pause and reflect, go back and read these and look at yourself through your inner voice, right? Without the lens of other people. That's just you. Protect that time. And so again, like, so that is, you know, part of the journaling aspect. I mean, there's some like real like easy tips that you can do or attract tactics. The first of which is Mourning Pages, which is one thing, a concept that I love. Have you ever used Mourning Pages before, Alexandra? Yeah. Can you explain the concept for anyone that might, you know, is tired of hearing from me?
No, we're not tired of you know, I'm not going to explain it as eloquently. I'll just explain it from my perspective. Mourning Pages is a way to get out all of your freshest thoughts without the sort of weight and distraction of what happens through our whole day. It's when your brain is the freshest. It's when your brain is just rebooting. And so your thoughts are also, your inner thoughts are what's going on inside you is far more clear than they will be as the day goes by. So it's basically committing to focusing in on getting all your thoughts out, doesn't matter what they are, getting all your thoughts out every single morning as a regular practice and focus out on pages. That's the very simple version of it.
Exactly. And, you know, you can do this in any format that you want. You can do it on pen and paper. You can use Google. I use Google Docs sometimes. I use Evernote. There are so many tools out there, but one of the best practices that I can recommend for your writing is waking up in the morning, right? And whether it's 5 minutes, if it's 1 minute, seriously, if it's 1 minute, get started that way, right? But 30 minutes, you know, an hour, right? And if you can do this, I would even recommend this, like, you know, maybe grab a cup of coffee and a bottle of water, right? But don't check your phone. Don't check your email. Don't log on to social media, right? It is you and this pen and paper and whatever it is that you want to talk about, right? And so, you know, there's some influencers that I'd recommend that you guys check out. Tim Ferriss is one. He's notorious for morning pages and talking about their impact on him, right? You know, he does one really great exercise that he does for his own personal growth and development is fear setting. And so I believe that this is, as a result of his morning pages, is he writes down the things that he's scared of so that they don't haunt him anymore, right? Because, you know, he basically names the devil so that he can go face the devil in the face. And so that type of creative confidence, that inner voice confidence development, you know, I believe it is rooted in this concept of morning pages, which is just allowing, you know, we're empathetic beings. Like, you know, we take on other people's stuff, even if we don't really understand that we are, right? And that has a way of manifesting itself internally. But, you know, just like a lot of things, the internal stuff has to find a way of getting itself out. And not to say that you have to share everything, right? But you do have to, you know, if this is something that you struggle with, write it down. Morning pages are a great way of doing that, right? And that goes back to another concept, Alexandra, that I want you guys to remember is this concept of feeling versus emoting, right? The feeling stuff is internal. That's for you. And writing, my hope is an extension of how you feel things out, right? The emotion, the emoting is for everyone else. That's what you are letting other people know how you feel about something, right? Based off of the inner work, the inner feeling work that you have done. So if we can do this, you know, morning pages are a really great way of separating the stuff that you keep for you and the stuff that, you know, you just have to communicate with other people if you want, if they want to, you know, live in abundance and in prosperity with you. And so so my other concept for you guys, if we're talking about pen to paper, is, you know, outside of keeping a journal, is you got to do it every day. So whatever your method of writing is, you have to do that every day. And so, you know, my final tip in terms of how to write every day is to just get started. And I know that sounds maybe a little silly, little cliche, but I've actually really kind of boiled down this into a concept, this concept that I called version zeros. Okay. And so I believe a lot of our hangups of, you know, putting pen to paper is we start saying, I don't know what I want to write. I don't. And if we kind of narrow in a little bit more and we're gentle on ourselves and we say, hey, I don't have to have it all figured out right now. You know, I'm going to have probably 15 versions of this before I'm able to fully express, you know, what's on my mind or what's on my heart. So if I'm just going to get started right now, I'm going to protect 15 or 20 minutes every day. But for today, I'm going to get started with my version 0. And my version 0 is my uninterrupted, non-judgmental. I'm not like, if you can break it down, we want to get into our flow state, right? And so our flow state is allowing the words that's in our mind and in our heart and our stomach, whatever, to get out on pen and paper and just to flow. And it might be gibberish. I'm telling you, I've like gone back and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I don't know. But that's just version 0. So I don't really care, right? I got it out. And I'm going to sit on it for a little bit because I know I got to work on my inner voice before I start telling this to other people. And then I start editing it down, right? And so editing is this process of, okay, well, what does this word mean, right? or maybe I might share this with somebody that I really trust. Like, what do you think about this? Right? And then going back and maybe swapping out words, or perhaps doing some additional research, right? Additional research then has the opportunity to improve the ideas and the concepts that you've begun to express, right? So you can start borrowing from other people who have a little bit more of that creative or that technical confidence that you lack. You're borrowing, right? Which is part of art, you know, right? Like everyone, I can't remember the phrase, but it's all great art is either borrowed or stolen, right? It's, you know, it's, I mean, that is part of the process is of being inspired by other people, right? And, you know, if we're just making this, like, you know, really hit home this concept of intellectual property, right? It has traditionally been something used to disenfranchise our communities, right? So if we're getting out our ideas, let's protect them, right? Let's really make sure that we're working on what we're saying. Let's protect them as well.
In tying this back into the idea of, Juneteenth, and we're talking about freedom, emancipation, you know, being able to communicate something that, being able to communicate our feelings. You were talking about emotion and emoting, the difference. Have you done any writing yourself, or can you talk a little bit about when somebody wants to express around a concept like Juneteenth that is already something that people know about, is something, you know, because I think a lot of times when I approach something that everybody knows about, everybody's done something about it, there's art that's already been made about it, and I'm like, oh, but how do I?
Totally.
You know, I'm talking about that weird space where you're drawn, but you're like, but everybody knows everything about this already. You know, like how do you?
I believe that so in addition to working on that inner voice, it is a combination of, well, you combine that, I should say, with discovering your lens on what the story is, right? So if we're looking at this concept of Juneteenth, a real practical writing exercise that I'd love to introduce to everyone. Who, Alexander, do you like Pixar? You ever watch Disney Pixar movies?
Yeah, I've seen, yeah, like Monsters Inc.
Okay, all right, for sure. Well, so one writing exercise, like Pixar is notorious, like they've won Oscars, they've won all sorts of awards. They are notoriously great storytellers. They are notoriously great writers, right? And so again, if we're looking at art, right? Again, like all art is either borrowed or stolen, right? And so if we're looking at these stories that Pixar are telling, there are some themes that we can start extrapolating, right? You have Monsters Inc., for example. You have a hero. The hero goes through something, right? Then as a result of going through something, they change and then they become a better person. And right, so this is a story that we've all heard before, but we package it a little bit different. We put some monsters in here, right? We put a little girl in a monster costume. We put a bad guy in. We have this whole creative world, right? And so Pixar, again, like, you know, one of the exercises that they do as a team, this collaborative exercise that they do is, you know, they have writing circles, right? And so as part of their writing circles, they use this concept known as, well, it's gotten to the point where it's known as the Pixar method to storytelling. And so what they do is, and I'll introduce you to the prompt, but they use a prompt, right? Anytime somebody wants to pitch a story that the team is going to invest their resources, their time, their money, their energy in hopefully developing a movie, right? They have to be able to pitch this story to a group of writers and everyone be able to say, yeah, that's a story I can dig. I like that. I'm feeling that. Yeah, we could do something with that. Let's build on that a little bit. And then we can, you know, turn that into a treatment. And if that treatment's good enough, then we can turn that into a script, right? And if, you know, and so it goes to this process, right? So you can maybe think of the Pixar story as the version 1, right? So your version 0 is, you know, your uninterrupted thoughts, like you just putting stuff down. And your version 1 is, okay, like, let me try to frame this story that I'm trying to tell through this prompt. And so I can share my screen. Let me see if I can in here. This is my first time, so bear with me.
No problem.
Okay. And so, you know, this is actually, I would love for you guys to use this prompt. Can you see my screen, Alexandra?
I cannot see your, oh, here we go. Now I can. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So, you know, I want you guys to, you know, walk away today with at least, you know, one creative exercise under your belt. So I want you guys to use this prompt in order to tell an imaginative story about your ancestors, right? Through this lens of Juneteenth, through this lens of freedom. And so, you know, the first step of this process is deciding on a period of time in the past, present, or future, which are, you know, essential elements in seeking your purpose, right? The purpose of the story that you're looking to tell. I want you to select 3 to 5 photos that you find online to help you to describe this story, to provide a visual representation of this movie that we're creating. But I want you guys to use this prompt that Disney uses, Disney writers, Disney, you know, the Disney producers, like that they use in order to tell or to pitch a story, right? In order to develop a story. And so they start out with this prompt. It goes, once upon a time there was blank. Every day, blank. One day, blank. Because of that, blank. Because of that, blank. Until finally, blank. So that's 6 lines, right? And I'll leave it on the screen so you guys can, you know, hopefully write it down or copy it. But it's very easy to search online. Just search for the Pixar method to telling stories. But this is a fantastic way if you have an idea or, you know, at least a concept that you are storyboarding, right? This is a fantastic way, and this is what this whole exercise is, right? When we include the photos into this process, it is, you know, beginning the visual story, right? And then as we put that into the world, as people read it and digest it, well, then it becomes their own internal narrative, and they can start, you know, picturing or envisioning the things that you are describing. And so I'll give you guys how I started Food Tribe. So once upon a time, there was a kid from South LA. Every day he watched his mom struggling in order to give them a better life. One day he got a job in restaurants and decided that he wanted to have a career in hospitality. Because of that, he graduated from college and started learning about digital marketing and how to build a business. Because of that, he started blogging about food and documenting his local experiences until finally he launched a blog that then turned into a community of online foodies that were interested in ending hunger. Boom. Right? And so that is, you know, that's like not that much, right? Like it's not too far-fetched. And there are a lot of gaps that you can fill in, right?
I mean, it sounds like how a little kid tells a story. And
exactly.
It's really interesting because that's how little kids learn to speak and tell stories, is they just learn they only know basic language. And so I think it's a really good start for anybody who's just like, okay, well, it's a foundation. So like, it's good for anybody starting, but it's also good for like well-seasoned writers. Obviously at Pixar, there's well-seasoned writers. So it's a nice outline, and I think that can give somebody confidence in their writing. And I would hope that people who are watching, we had asked people to go and research Juneteenth. And I hope that people are watching that we asked to go research Juneteenth and then give us a writing about it. If you're scared to do it, but you want to and you're drawn to, use that outline. I mean, that's just like really simple. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, Deem.
What's up, Deem? That's actually it. That's all the tips that I have, guys. So I think we have a couple minutes for questions, if there are any.
Let's see. Thank you for this, Terrence. Family tuning in online, wherever you're tuning in from, do you have any questions for Terrence? Do you have a piece of writing that you'd like to share with us? You know, we said we'd yield some time for creatives from the continent and other time zones in the diaspora. who might not be able to join us for the open mic to share a little bit of what they wrote. If any of you are here, please tune in, chime in with your questions, let us know. We might even be able to send in a link and have you get on and share what you have here. But in the meantime, Terence, until someone comes through with a question, perhaps just a question for you. And I asked Minister Jazz to reflect on this earlier this morning. It being Juneteenth, this is one of the conversations that we've gotten into, and in ways an attack as well, on this being, how was it put, Alexandra? Not our event to have. Juneteenth is not something for Africa or Africans to have. We have a question from Kamal. Kamal, thank you for tuning in. An Africa Week 2020 veteran and supporter. Thank you. Kamal is asking, do you ever work with other people on writing projects?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is, I would say, part of the process is, I mean, that's the beautiful part of the process, really, is it's like a quilt, right? And I just love the collaboration of, an easy way to get started collaborating with someone if you are looking to write. And this is an exercise I do with anyone that I'm helping to write like a business plan for, or like a social media campaign, is a swipe file. And so a swipe file is a shared document, usually in the form of like Google Docs or Evernote, right? And because we don't quite literally have the words to express what we're saying or the story that it is that we're telling, the way that we get started is through links and through photos and through videos and other influencers, and then eventually phrases and keywords, or whatever that is, right? So I love the process of quite literally just dumping ideas into into a shared kind of vision, right? A vision, but whatever that is, and that's our version 0, and then we iterate together and to eventually produce a rich quilt worth of information, right, that we're looking to communicate. So yes.
What's been your most successful writing collaboration, but also tell us which one was your most successful and which did you learn the most out of, and if they are the same, please.
Most successful, that's a little bit of a loaded question, because if we're defining success on like currency or social currency.
For you.
Okay. I'll allude to 2. So I'm pretty active on Medium. So my most commercially successful post was a post I did on the end of the LeBron James era in basketball, right? And I'm a huge NBA fan. But again, like I'm someone, like I've got my own view on like the NBA, and like I love being able to write about my experiences and social justice issues. Really fantastic book. I'll see if I can find it here for you guys. But it's The Power of the Black Male Athlete. And if we're looking at these concepts through these social justice concepts through sports and athletics, I just love what our athletes have to contribute to the mix, right, in establishing myth and story. And so I would say that that post was most successful because I did a good job of developing some myth about the NBA and what it was that I wanted to see. And then, I got, it had, the most amount of views that I've ever had for one of my posts. I think it had like, almost 6,000 views. But my most successful, like, post, in terms of my own development is, a post I'll share in this link, or I'll drop a link for you guys. It's called Stereotypes of a Black Male Misunderstood, My Entrepreneurial Journey. And you know, this was one that I wasn't even sure if I wanted to share with people, but you know, it was very in line with my overall mission for, you know, both of my companies. And so I didn't want to be a fraud, right? Because I am someone that believes in purpose and, you know, overcoming trauma in order to, you know, build something new. And, you know, my businesses are deeply personal, right? And so just understanding how, sure, yeah, you can share it. It's a public post. You know, I would say if we're looking at like if I ever were to write like a biography, this would probably be like my version 0 of like my first 10 chapters, right? Or whatever that is. And so, you know, as I'm like weaving my life, I think it's important that other people are able to take my own experiences and you know, apply it to themselves. And so I was proud of myself for like being that vulnerable. You know, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue the process. I don't know, because it's like, you know, a lot of getting these things out it can be painful. Let's keep it real. You know, some of this stuff hurts, like, you know, and, you know, the writing is what just gets us started, because then once you have like this cohesive, like, oh, so this is a story of my life. Well, I'm still alive. Some of these people are still alive. Some of these things, like, I can still do something about, right? So then that's when the action comes in. And so then what you're doing at that standpoint is you are continuing to live, you're continuing to write your story, right? And so, you know, I would just say that having the creative confidence to get it out and, you know, wanting to help other people get their own stories out, or having the confidence to get their stories out, was then beneficial, because I was like, man, if I could get that out, well, I can build a business better, or I can do X, Y, and Z, and I can start learning from some of these past traumas so that they don't impact me again, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so very timely right now when we say we need to reclaim our narratives. We need to have our platforms that are able to share our truths. You know, we're able to shatter these stereotypes, like you've done in your own writing, but also in being able to relate to one another, to ask these questions of what pains us and what's holding us back, what's holding us from connecting with one another. What are the questions we don't want to ask ourselves? You know, having that conversation, having that space. And I really love how you put it. You know, it's how you viewed you. It's a conversation with you. And I know this is something that at some point in our lives, we all struggle with. Do we really love who we're seeing in the mirror? Do we really love that vessel that's holding our soul, our spirit? Are we in tune with what's going on, with all the feelings we're feeling? Are we letting ourselves feel these feelings? One way to say that, one way to see that, one way to embrace that has been to express through writing.
Absolutely.
There are other ways, which I'm hoping we will see more of later on tonight in the open mic, but this is a great start. We are seeing more people feel the need to take out what's inside of them, to just let it see light, because, you know, we're so desperate to just see a glimmer of light. And I'm hoping these tips will resonate with you all. Terrence has been the most accessible person from to, as far as be here, be ready to respond, be ready to take in your feedback. Reach out to him, follow his platforms, see what questions he might be able to answer for you, but also see what questions you've been avoiding to ask yourself. And I'll like to, Terrence, if you can share with us, again, going back to the question I asked Mr. Jazz, what is Juneteenth to you?
I guess I'll answer that through the addition of 2 more concepts, because you just hit me with some stuff. This concept of you, break that down in an acronym, break it down further, right? Break that down to define it better. For me, you is your own understanding, right? And that is what a lot of this writing process is understanding you, right? How do you feel about things, about the world, about how do you understand, how do you make sense of all of this? Because if I look at this concept of Juneteenth, I see nothing but insanity. I see why do we think that a portion of our population back then was so willing to hold on to an population of people, past this mandated government deadline, right? Like, why were they so willing to protect that? And to assume that that level of fanaticism, that level of protection of that evil wouldn't have ramifications today, that's the definition of insanity to me, right? And so that's my understanding of it. And so then if we go to this other concept, I define purpose in 3 Ps. It's understanding something that you don't like about your past, right? Understanding your present circumstance and a problem that you want to solve, and then making a prediction based off of the world that you want to see. Mm. So if we're looking at Juneteenth through this lens of, man, this really had an impact on my family in the following ways, right? Or excuse me, slavery had an impact on my family in the following ways, right? And if I can, you know, maybe understand what this holiday of Juneteenth, how that impacted my family. Let me understand both the trauma and then how that might have been a beacon of hope, right? And that's my past. Well, then what are my present circumstances? Well, I love to write. And I see that the problems from slavery, from the prison industrial complex, well, those are still relevant themes of today. So how can I make a prediction on the world that, you know, it is that I want to see, right? You know, and that's really manifest. I'm writing with Africa Week 2020, right? And I'm writing with, you know, members in South LA, and we're talking about, you know, writing business plans that last for hundreds of years, right? That, you know, are looking at educational sectors, that are looking at, you know, issues of spirituality, that are looking at, you know, these tentpole beacons, right? Which, you know, for so long were hopelessness in a lot of ways, right? So that's how I'd answer it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And a lot to chew on, a lot to digest, a lot to process. I guess the reason I'm asking this question, obviously I'm Nubian, and I am originally from Sudan, so I'm not African American. I didn't know. Well, I mean, I am African and American, but I am not. I don't have that part of our history as a family is not part of my personal experience and my personal history. And in putting together and liaising this event or co-organizing it, you know, these are some of the questions that Alexandra and I were, you know, going back and forth on, that we want to learn. And the idea is to learn, to teach. And one of the feedback, one of the comments, one of the things that came back to us is that we don't have the right to have this event. It's not our event. It's not our cause. Mm. It's not. We shouldn't take it away from the descendants of slaves, and make it about Africa. Now, obviously, that's a lot.
That's complicated.
I know what you're talking about right now. When you were talking it before, I was like, what? And now I remember what you're talking about.
You know, that it shouldn't be about. But you know what? This was just one of. This is just one of the examples. We've had this. I've personally received this in more than one way, and in more than one platform or venue. do Africans have the right, do continental Africans have the right to engage in these events? Do you feel as an African American, and I'm speaking to you personally, not that you represent all African Americans. I think one thing we can all agree on as a family is that there's not one person who represents all of us. There isn't. And we continue to pay the price for having us all painted with one brush. You know, someone decided all Black people or all people of African descent are subhuman or suboptimal or this or that. And, you know, that's been our story as we try to change it. But now for you personally, I know you're someone who engaged with us on this. You've engaged with Africa Week 2020 in our inaugural event. So you know why we're doing this. But how are ways continental Africans, do you feel, can navigate or can approach or ask these questions without stepping on any toes, without offending people by our lack of knowledge in wanting to learn?
I mean, I think that you just started. That's your version 0, is you're asking, well, what the hell does Juneteenth even mean, right? And this is what I understand about Juneteenth, right? But what does it mean to you guys? Talk to me. Write it down. Let me read about it, right? And that is, it might not make sense to you the first time, right? But hopefully you can start forming opinions after that. And then you can start, you know, doing that internal work of matching the opinions that you're forming against your value system, right? And then your value system is indicative of how you feel on things. And then how you feel on things is how you then start to talk about things, right? So, yeah, no, I think that, I mean, listen, I think that the challenge is everyone has all, as much as we want to write down good shit to start to drop it, but we've also written and said bad shit, right? And so, you know, part of the challenge of understanding is, you know, when new attention is brought to us, there's a little bit of uncomfortability when new data, when new information goes up against our value system, right? And so we start this internal struggle, right? And so I don't want to get ethereal, but it's just I think that so much of this process of communicating is understanding that, again, if words have power and meaning, there's going to be some language that just might hit you in a particular place because of your trauma, because of your experience, right? I would just say, like, don't get discouraged by that, right? I think uncomfortability, that's tension. In so many ways is good, right? Tension is a part of the process, because I think that tension, if you look at like how muscles grow, they're quite literally ripped, right? And then they allow themselves to repair in order to get strong, in order to build muscle mass, right? And so if we can do this collective process of massaging and tearing and then healing and getting stronger together through our language, right? I think that that's the way. And I would just say the counter to that, just to kind of wrap it up, is that, you know, the challenge becomes, if we become uncomfortable with the language, with using our words, well, then what's the opposite circumstance, right? Violence is a spectrum. So language can be violent. Lying is a form of violence, right? Well, we've seen the results of a generational lie, right? This lie that, oh, just because slaves were emancipated on this date, that they had X number of rights, right? We saw that lie. And so we're seeing the results of that in the street. It has erupted into some forms of physical violence, right? And so just consider, like, if we're talking about on a global scale, what the ramifications are for not having these tension building conversations. Right, there's some very real risk to not being able to communicate and express these ideas. And, you know, I think that that's how I started this conversation, is that, you know, the words that you are communicating to yourself that you're not eloquating to other people, they have tangible ways of manifesting. So if you're not getting it out through your mouth or through your pen, well, then my best guess is that your actions are going to be indicative of the thoughts that you're having internally, that you are not being challenged and allowing you to grow. And it's a squirmy place, which is another analogy that I use, right? When we talk about this concept of diversity and inclusion. So when we're talking about changing our core beliefs, our philosophies, you have to sit with it. You have to question your values. You have to understand. You have to inquire, right? You have to remember why you started. And I think the last M was you have to motivate. You have to stay motivated to the process of, you know, you're never gonna express things the best way, right? But if you come with this intention of, well, hey, this is what Juneteenth means to me, and my intention for asking what it means is, you're my brother, you're my sister, I want to build a relationship with you, I want to live in this world better with you, and so I want to ask you these questions so I have an understanding of what your world has been like, what you want to see, right? How I can be a better ally to you, right? Well, then that's strength. But we typically like to silo. We don't trust each other oftentimes, right? It's like, I can't trust you with this information because you're going to hurt me with it, right? And so that in-between spot is hard.
It may not even just be hurt. It might be, and this is what I was saying on the panel I was just on, is that, and what I say often actually, is that we have been traumatized into survival mode, and this trauma and being in this constant state of survival mode leaves no room for us to trust others. Indeed, we continue mistrusting ourselves. We continue double guessing, second guessing, triple guessing, you name it. Whether that step we're taking is the right step, is in the right direction. And then let's not forget the Insta world that we live in, and the flood of information and things that continue to happen. And this, Alexandra, this is something you and I were talking about yesterday, you know, this phenomenon of FOMO, the fear of missing out. It has us constantly saying, is this the right step? Is this the right step? Would I have, you know, would I get more out of this? Would I get more out of that? And in doing that, we're missing so many great events are happening today to honor this day. And they're all, at least the ones I've come across, are all organized by people that I know. And for me, it's just, I'm wondering, why aren't we all just coming together for this one? And I know for me personally, this is something that I still need to work harder on, but this state of lack of trust, I think, goes back to what you were saying, lying being a very viable form of violence that we don't acknowledge as such. You know, we tell ourselves it's just a white lie. We tell ourselves it's just a little bit, you know, it'll pass. And then all of a sudden, we have an entire people who have no idea and no connection to our power, to our ancestors, to our divine rights, to our claim, to our ground, to our soil, to who we are, and to what we're meant to be doing. And we're like, oh, we're so lost. Why are you lost? The guide is there. You just need to ask. And, you know, some advertising for my sister here. If you don't know and are looking to find a way to reconnect and find that path, Alexandra has offered her guidance and her service to help facilitate just the starting point. And, you know, if not Alexandra, there are many, many, many more. We just need to find a way to keep going back, to keep connecting. Terrence, I will ask one last thing and I will let you go.
Sure.
I wanted to add really quick to what you were saying. And you know, we were talking about the lies. Terrence was talking about the lying is violence. And one of the biggest lies that we've been told, and I think this lie was also told I know this lie was also told in Africa, all over the continent, was that people who are here are not African, that we are like these lost people, that those who are from here, Black people who are from here, are not African, and that we don't have a real connection to Africa, and then Africa that we are not related.
Yeah.
That is such a big lie. And it's something that was done even in colonial. I've mentioned this before, in West Africa when they created Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana. They took families that were just living in the area, and they took families and they put a sister over here and a dad over here and a brother over there, and they made sure that people could be next to each other, and they created borders and changed their names. And so if that's not violence, I don't know what is. And so when we come back to this Juneteenth thing, and there's this sort of like ownership thing happening over it, or it has to be this way, or it's supposed to be that way, or this, you know, this group has claimed that this is what it is. Well, if we start recognizing that we are all one big family with all of our ups and downs and lefts and rights and everything, then we're going to find unity on how all of what we all bring to the table and how we all celebrate this thing. And it's the fact that there was a group of Africa's children who were not finding freedom, and there was a day when they found more freedom, is something for all of us to celebrate.
To piggyback on that, you know, and I do want to wrap up because I have to get on the road here in a little bit, but that is the power of the lie that, and this is part of the shared experience of Black people, if we really want to talk about it or consider it, is that because we don't have a shared history, we then had to adopt the history of, you know, the colonizers, right? And so the sense of identity was lacking because, again, like we didn't have any of our own examples. We were then forced with other examples, right? And so that's where, you know, we started seeing the competition. It's me versus you rather than the us, right? There was no myth. The power of myth is powerful, right? Mythos. And mythos has allowed us to get to where we are today in terms of capitalism is almost like a religion in a lot of ways, right? The myth of the founding fathers and the myth of building businesses and the myth of, you know, and so what we are seeing as a result of technology and this wave of what we're seeing in our communities is that, well, you know what? For every Juneteenth that is here in the United States, there are probably a dozen nameless other dates, right? Or maybe those are name dates.
Yeah, that's really good. I think about that. Yes. Right.
You know, of someone who was like, man, wasn't I supposed to be free last week? Right? I got a text from my cousin that said we should, like, what, you know? I bet there are a million stories like that, right? So if we can begin the process of developing our own myth, right? You know, and that's, you know, I think that part of that is, you know, myth has its roots in the truth, right? But then the courage part is, okay, well, let's use our collective experience to dream up this bigger future based off of this collective wave of bad feelings. Because there's a lot of bad feelings out there, right? So let's write the good feelings out. Let's emote what we want to see. Let's make some demands. And that's why, you know, we have this very unique opportunity right now as creatives, as writers, where people are listening, right? They are listening, you know. People are scared of what they are seeing on the streets, right? And they are listening to demands. At least some of them are. And I don't want to discourage, because I want you to write in the morning, or I want you to write in the morning and protest in the evening, y'all. You know, like that's how we got to keep it going, right? Is getting out there with the culture and talking to other people, get their stories, get their perspective. Oh yeah, that's how you're feeling about that? Man, well, I have another friend that's working on this. Let me write you an email. Let me introduce you this way, right? Let's do some content together about this. I want to write a story about you, right? That's how we keep it going. So it is both the power and the action, right? Or the meaning and the action of what you're doing. So on that note.
Thank you, Terrence.
Thank you.
No worries. Appreciate y'all.
Embodying what you are saying, for leading by example. You are not just saying what you are saying. You tuned in to Africa Week 2020. You joined a panel. You made a pledge. You followed through with the pledge. Here you are. You joined the board of EDFU Foundation, and as a board member, and I look forward to many more. But in doing that, you also said, let me meet with each and every one of you individually and see how I can help each and every one of you individually before we move together as a collective. And this is something that we need to see more of. And we are, I think, in many ways seeing more of. So I thank you for your time, for sharing your experience and your knowledge and your wisdom with us. We won't keep you any longer, but
appreciate y'all.
Look forward to having you later on the open mic, and I'll ask you the question there.
Bet. All right, guys. I'm going to talk to y'all later, okay? Have a good rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. We have Herschel Daniels Jr. saying, people of African descent in the African diaspora born in the USA are a distinct type of African people with the strongest current economy and infrastructure. How can we work with that in a way that is constructive, that is productive, that is bringing us together as a people to build? I was just on a panel now, Alexandra, and I think it works great to, it was a great way to end that panel, I think, to bring it to a close. It wasn't ended because I think the conversation must continue, but it was a fill in the blank exercise. Africa is, and her people are. I would like to invite people viewing, people tuning in, to fill in the blanks for us. Africa is, and her people are. While you do that, one of the conversations we had about what we can do with this time and taking the time to actually just heal and share what's within, to express whether it's pain or grief or hope or anxiety or love or passion or whatever it is that we're feeling, but to be able to share it with the family, to be able to come through and have it be heard. The importance of having our own ears hear our own lips say what our heart is carrying is something not all of us have the right to, although it is our divine right. In honoring Juneteenth, in honoring emancipation, this is a form, as Alexandra said, and as Minister Jazz said earlier today, and as we heard now, Terence, and I think as each and every one of us believes in their heart of heart, being free to be who you are, to express what you're feeling, is the truest form of freedom, truest form of emancipation. Being able to identify however you choose to identify, in whatever capacity, in whatever magnitude you are able to identify, is in and of itself power. So, Alexandra, Africa is, and her people are. Fill in the blanks.
Africa is, Africa is alive. That's the feeling I got when I was there last year. And by alive, it doesn't even really, Africa is vibrantly alive, and her people are finding out. And by her people, I'm talking about those who, I think if you live there, you probably already know that, right? But I think despite all the conversations we've had about what it means to go back to Africa, where the money's going, the awesome stuff about it, and also the corruption around it, I think that there is a heartbeat that people here now are starting to respond to. Africa is the heart, and her people are falling in rhythm. I think people are starting here to remember who they are and that they are of Africa. And I think that I'm noticing just from people I know in Africa and what I'm seeing come out of Africa that people are starting to remember us as well.
I think Africans are starting to remember. I think it's a start.
It's a start. You know, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, 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 we do. Yeah, we do. Of course we do. But Africa is alive. I love that. So Africa is alive, and Africa is vibrantly alive, and her people are. What would you say her people are?
Africa is alive. Sorry, say that again.
Africa is vibrantly alive. I'm writing down the quote. Africa is vibrantly alive, and her people are.
I don't remember. I don't know where it came from. Her people are remembering. Her people are waking up. Her
people are coming.
Her people are coming.
There you have it. Africa is vibrantly alive, and her people are coming. We have 2 people watching us at this moment. So we will take this time and quickly tell you what we have been doing since our inaugural Africa Week 2020. Alexandra has been obsessively editing and cutting and cleaning up videos that will be put on our website that we're very excited to share with you all very soon. Please make sure you do register. Please make sure you sign up for our newsletters, because that is how you get the password to access these videos. And
I'll put the sign up link for that right
archives,
now.
But also for you to access our Ubuntu Fellowship page. Now, for those of you who are hearing about the Ubuntu Fellowship for the first time, this is a partnership between the Nubia Initiative, I Will Coaching, Alexandra Loves. We're having many more tune in and come in. But it is a platform of transfer and exchange of knowledge and expertise. It is building the intellectual capital of people of African descent coming together to train, to empower, to engage, and to edutain, to collectively and mutually grow and expand on one another's vision and one another's work for the ultimate goal of Africa Rising. So if you are an organization that is just starting and needs help, but can't afford it, reach out. If you are an organization that has the resources, but still want to help empower, yield your platform, reach out. If you are a rising star looking to make a point, looking to prove and show how you are more than one label or any one box or any one title that one position can hold, and you want to venture out and try new things, reach out. If you're a rising star who has a specific target and a specific goal for growth and don't know where to start, reach out. But before you do all of that, sign up to our newsletter so you know where to reach out to us. We want to thank you for your patience in us navigating this platform that is also digital, also versatile, and also frustrating with some of the technical difficulties that we continue to experience. You know, just our inaugural one was through Zoom, and just towards the end of Africa Week 2020, Alexandra and I get comfortable enough with Zoom, and just before we start launching this one, Zoom decides to shut down activists on orders of governments, and we can't support that, because if we're fighting for freedom, if we're genuinely fighting for freedom, we must understand that it's freedom for all. There is no ifs and buts, and there is no piece by piece. And here there is a play on words. We can no longer have piece by piece. We can no longer accept the crumbs when we know we have what it takes to make a whole new cake. A whole new cake, and eat it too. For those who say we can't have our cake and eat it too. Yes, we can. And we will. And we will show you. But till then, but also for you to access our Ubuntu Fellowship page. Technical challenges. We continue to rise. We continue to rise. What we have for you moving forward for this event. We wanted today to be honoring of Juneteenth, honoring of that part of our past as a family, but also looking forward, looking upwards to our future, to the future of the Black Lives Movement, the galvanized, the growing, the thriving, the most inspiring global Black Lives Movement that we are seeing, and it is just only beginning. In doing that, this next panel that we have is ways to do that. Is how can we go back to connecting to our roots, connecting to who our ancestors are, to connecting who we are as a people in relation to soil and our innate connection to soil, and how that can be our form of liberation, that how can that be our path to freedom, to genuine freedom. We will be discussing that. We will be looking into that through the way Africa Week 2020 does it. We'll be having the panel. Everyone's going to come and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm working on, and this is what I need help with. And the second part of the panel will be a discussion. How do we make these things happen? How do we come up with a plan where all of us can actually come together and all of us can roll up our sleeves? And even if it's not something we feel called on doing or know how to do, Alexander, like you were saying earlier with the legal framework panel, it's not something that you feel inclined or interested or just, you don't feel like it's your area, but you know there's something else that you can do about this. So where does it fit into the plug? Is it just sharing this platform? Is it just amplifying it? Is it sending people to our direction? Is it just announcing that, hey, by the way, if anyone knows any young law students looking to intern, go there or something. We all have to find our ways to doing that. And this is what we'll be doing in the panel from 2 to 4. And then we have another Empower session, which is a workshop by our comrade, our brother, a community leader, Attorney Talib Sabir, in giving us a crash course. And it's specifically directed to people in the USA, though they're all tips that we need to keep in mind wherever we are as people of African descent, to familiarize, to activate, to know our rights, so that when we go out and claim them, we can't have someone tell us that's not our right and it's not for us to have. Then we will call on the power of the collective creative, and we have oh so many. And it is the one thing they can't shut down, because it's the language of the hearts. And if you have a song that is so powerful, it moves you out of your chair, or if you have words that you hear and can't sit still because they're ringing so true into your very core, they're piercing you, that is the power of the creative. And we will have that from 5 p.m. EST until late, until 7:30 before we go for the closing ceremony. So please, if you know any creatives, if you know any artists who have something to say, come through and share it with us. at some point, we hope we will yield the platform and just shut all our screens, sort of like this. We'll also take the names and just have our people say whatever they want to say. If you have something to share and you just need it to be heard, we want to make that platform available. We may not be physically with you wherever you are, but we want you to know that we are with you and you are with us and we are family. And we don't just say we see you, and we don't just say we hear you, and we don't just say we feel you. We will do everything in our power to make that a reality. We will do everything in our power to have you be heard, to hear you, to see you, to feel you, to hold you. And know that we're not alone, as difficult as this may seem, as dark as it may seem. You are not alone. We are not alone.
You said it.
I did. If you have anything to add or to share to that, Alexandra, please do. Otherwise, I think we can tune in some of the clips that you have lined up just to give a bit of a history of a background of Juneteenth.
Sure.
Any of our family tuning in have anything to add or have anything to say or would like to share something, please do. We are here. In the meantime, Alexandra.
Okay. Let's see if I can share screen. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, allow me to share screen.
I fear that. Oh, what did you say?
It won't allow me to share screen.
Okay, do you want to send the link to my?
Yes, let me do that. I'll put it right here in the chat here. Did you get it?
Yes. Yeah. Just navigating the platform. Okay, here we are. Let's see, share screen. Says who? Okay.
Hallelujah, it's done. I believe on this song. I am saved. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an
For those still tuned in, thank you for your patience. Thank you for being with us. We are ending this broadcast and starting our next one, discussing rooting for growth, how our connection to land and soil could be our way and form to liberation. Thank you so much. Stay tuned.